Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're going over a new poll out of the state of New York that shows what the matchup looks like between Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul and Republican Elise Stefanik, the U.S. representative, in this potential matchup. So in this article from the New York Post, which is written by Vaughn Golden and Kevin Sheehan on August 12th, they say that Kathy Hochul leads Representative Elise Stefanik by only 14 points in a hypothetical matchup for New York governor, according to a new Sienna University poll released on Monday. While still a hefty lead, it is the smallest gap between Hochul and a potential GOP challenger since then Representative Lee Zeldin trailed Hochul by only 11 points just 3 weeks before the 2021 general election. Hochul would go on to win by only 7 points. So, what they're saying is in Sienna's polling, this is the closest matchup that they have seen thus far. Stefanik can highlight that more than a year out from a potential matchup, Hochul's lead over Stefanik is only 14 points, 45 to 31%, down from 23 points in June, and that Hochul doesn't hit that magic 51% mark, Sienna poll spokesperson Stephen Greenberg said. The poll results come as Stefanik has seemingly consolidated the GOP field should she pull the trigger on a gubernatorial run following Hudson Valley Congressman Mike Lawler's official exit from the race last month. Stefanik also had some other bright spots from the Sienna poll. She eked out a few points over Hochul among independents, 35 to 32% respectively. Stefanik is also one among suburban voters, those from Suffolk, Nassau, Westchester, Rockland, and Putnam counties, 51 to 39%. Or 41 to 39%, excuse me. Zeldin has similarly been leading among those two constituencies in October of 2021. Asked about her struggles in the suburbs and among independents, Hochul waved off this poll. "I've got my plate full. I let all the pundits figure out the polls," the governor told reporters. "It's my 16th election. I've been through countless polls, and guess what, team? There's going to be a lot more between now and next November," Hochul added. A fifth of those polled weren't familiar with Hochul or Stefanik. Stefanik clearly has room to grow with voters, either positively or negatively. While 49% of voters say they are very or somewhat familiar with her, 46% are not or are very not at all familiar with Stefanik, Greenberg said. The latest Sienna poll is catastrophic for Kathy Hochul as she is losing independent voters to Elise Stefanik, is below 50% on the ballot, and is only 35% of voters want to re-elect Kathy Hochul, as voters are increasingly looking to Elise Stefanik to deliver new leadership, Stefanik advisor Alex DeGrosse wrote in a statement. Hochul once again suffered from underwater favorability ratings this quarter. The respondents rated her 42% favorable to 44% unfavorable. The Democrat has had negative favorability ratings in 9 of the last 10 Sienna polls that have been taken. Asked if New York is on the right track or heading in the wrong direction, 41% said right track, as opposed to 45% who said it was heading in the wrong direction. So that's the article from the New York Post. So this is a very interesting poll here, because in the governor's race right now, Kathy Hochul, first to be the Democratic candidate again, has to defeat her own lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, who is running against her, in large part due to the fact of Kathy Hochul's approval ratings and Delgado believing she is open or potentially vulnerable to a primary challenge. Now, Hochul does have the endorsement of the Erie County Democratic Committee, 4 U.S. representatives, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and New York Representatives Tom Suozzi, Pat Ryan, and Gregory Meeks. And now it should be worth noting that in the only poll that's been taken thus far, in that Sienna University poll, Hochul was leading over Antonio Delgado 50 to 15%, so it looks like Kathy Hochul should not have too much of a problem surviving the Democratic primary. And the other polls from Sienna back in June that had also Richie Torres included, Torres is not running in the primary, it showed Kathy Hochul with a healthy lead over Antonio Delgado in those polls as well. So I think Kathy Hochul is going to be all right in surviving the Democratic primary. Now, on the Republican side of things, it's very interesting. For a while, it looked like Mike Lawler, the U.S. representative from the 17th district, was going to run for governor. And then about a month or so before his decision, we started getting reports that Elise Stefanik, the U.S. representative, has expressed interest in running for the race. And President Trump put out some statements essentially endorsing Lawler and Bruce Blakeman, another potential Republican candidate, for re-election here. This is what the Wikipedia article says. In May of 2025, President Donald Trump endorsed Lawler and Blakeman for re-election to their current post, quote, in what experts say is a not-so-subtle attempt to clear the field for upstate Congressman Elise Stefanik to get the GOP nomination. And that seemed to work. On July 23rd, Mike Lawler announced that he would run for re-election to Congress. In an interview with Fox and Friends, he said, quote, "There is no doubt that Hochul is the worst governor in America, but after months of deliberating over this and really working through it, I've decided the right thing to do for me and my family and my district is to run for re-election." So it's possible Bruce Blakeman could decide to run, as well as John Castellaneta and Betsy McCaw. But Elise Stefanik, the U.S. representative, if she decides to run, she is going to be the Republican nominee in all likelihood. As the second she enters this race, President Trump will endorse her, and that will essentially put the Republican primary to bed. Now, currently only one Republican, Carl Hyde Jr., is in this race. But again, if Stefanik runs, she should win that Republican primary without any issue. What the polling looked like before Lawler and Blakeman ruled out a run: the Sienna poll from back in June showed Stefanik at 35%. Lawler had 18 and Blakeman had 7. The Sienna poll from before that in May, very similar numbers: 35 for Stefanik, 22 for Lawler, and 11 for Bruce Blakeman. Other internal Republican polls like Coefficient had Stefanik up by a lot, by over like 50 and up to 60 points. Coefficient poll from back in May showed Stefanik leading by a large number. Gray House as well also showed Stefanik leading by large numbers. So unless Stefanik decides not to run or Kathy Hochul gets upset in the primary, we're probably going to see a governor's race of Kathy Hochul versus Elise Stefanik. And this could be very interesting. Right now, the political predictions from Cook Political Report, Sabato's Crystal Ball, and Race to the White House all have this race listed as likely for the Democrats. Inside Elections has it as a battleground. Now, Hochul in her campaign has mentioned that she has remained optimistic in her ability to win re-election, banking on her campaign on the hopes that many New Yorkers will feel pain from President Trump's cut to the federal workforce and tariffs. But this race could potentially be close. Now, the early polling between Hochul and Stefanik has not essentially been super close depending on which poll you're looking at. Sometimes it has been, sometimes it hasn't. From those three Republican polls, Gray House showed it a 6-point race. Coefficient showed it only a 1-point race, 43-42, which is very close. Harper polling showed 50 to 39, an 11-point race. But Sienna, I would say, is the most well-known and I would say generally respected of the polls done so far. And Sienna had 47 to 24 back in June. Now it has 45 to 31, with 20% still undecided. So there's a few things going on here in this. For one, the appetite for change from Kathy Hochul seems to be there in New York. In the Siena University poll, 35% of respondents said they would vote for Kathy Hochul, 53% would rather vote for a different candidate. But for Hochul versus Stefanik, Kathy Hochul gets up to 45%, Elise Stefanik has 31%, 3% other, 20% undecided. So just the math there is more than enough undecided vote out there for Elise Stefanik to actually defeat Kathy Hochul in the race. That's the good news for the Republicans. And we also know that Kathy Hochul is probably going to get more than 45%, and Elise Stefanik will definitely get more than 31%. When these polls show that like 20% of the vote is undecided, that's what they show right now, but it's also tricky because when you look at the recent election results in the state of New York, you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. So at the presidential level, just to give you a reference here, let me just refresh the page here. The cursor is being a little weird here. In New York, Kamala Harris got 55.9%, Donald Trump got 43.3%. That is what it ended up being. And I think we could probably expect that Elise Stefanik will get probably at least 42, 43% at the absolute lowest in this race. Now, Kamala Harris got up to 55%. Back in 2020, Joe Biden got up to 60.87%. Trump only got 37.74%. Now, at the governor level, in 2022, it was actually a very close race. Kathy Hochul got 53.2%, but Lee Zeldin was able to get up to 46.8% in a very competitive election. Where before that, 4 years prior, Andrew Cuomo, before he resigned, won his re-election by 23.4%. So New York's going to be very interesting to watch for in 2026, because was 2024 a sort of wake-up call, and 2022, where Kathy Hochul is so unpopular that it's going to be a very close race again, or is there actually the potential that New York could potentially be a battleground state at the governor's level, or will New York just go back to its safe Democratic identity of the past few years? It's going to be very interesting to watch for. When you look at the overall map for New York, I'll pull up the 2024 presidential map here. New York's going to be interesting because obviously New York City creates a lot of Democratic votes in this state, and it's going to be hard for a Republican to make up the margins, even if they're running relatively strongly compared to what 2022 was. Trump lost to Harris by about 13 points, and that was still the best a Republican has done in the state in a very long time. Now, the governor level, there is a better chance of it being a Republican win than the presidential level. For some reason, governor levels in American politics are more likely to vote for the party that the state is usually not in charge of at the state or at the Senate and presidential level. So Stefanik should have a better chance in the governor's race than, say, Trump did in the presidential race. But it's going to be interesting to watch. Looking at areas in New York City, like in Brooklyn, like Manhattan, like in Queens, can Stefanik cut into some of these margins at the 2024 level and try and match them or exceed what Lee Zeldin got in 2022? Stefanik, also being from upstate New York, can she improve in some of the margins, like in counties like Dutchess County or Ulster or Columbia or Rensselaer, these places that voted for Kamala Harris in 2024? Can Stefanik make inroads in these areas? Can she make inroads in Monroe, where Rochester is, or Erie, where Buffalo is, or Onondaga, where Syracuse is? Can these areas be cut into the margins by Elise Stefanik, or is Kathy Hochul going to survive and win here? It's going to be interesting to watch. Right now, for the 2026 governor's map, I currently have New York listed in the likely Democratic category. This is in between a 5 and 15% margin of victory. That's where I have it going right now. I think it's certainly very early on in the process. And until we get closer to the election, we won't have a really accurate look at how close this race could be, because there's the potential this race could end up being a very close race, like under 5% margin of victory, or it could even be an over 15-point blowout. We really don't know how it's going to go until we get more clarity on this race. But this poll shows that Kathy Hochul is leading. It's obviously very good news for her that she is leading by 14 points, but the fact there is a lot of undecided votes out there should give Democrats a little bit of pause, and we have to wait and see how that all will unfold. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts, and hope to see you in a future video.